I don't have the energy for anything clever this week, but it's Fragments of Silicon.
Someone opening a bottle? Anyway, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is the regular crew.
Oh man.
Let's get into the news. Petty Fan, once again, you are starting us off this week because you are just a never-ending cavalcade of news these days.
Well, I guess we can start with the crazy bullshit. So Thursday morning, I guess my neighbor needed to have some water line stuff done, but the line he needed to replace ran through our property. So without our permission, the company dug up a lot of our front yard and the yard between our houses, and they tore out a parking block, tore up a lot of our hedges, like half the grass in the front yard, destroyed a retaining wall and a fence, and just kind of tried to haphazardly put the fence up and leave. So my dad first contacted the insurance agent because, you know, that's not okay what they did. And they told my dad to go down and file a police report because, vandalism, destruction of property, and all that. Well, the police department gave us the name and number for the company who did this. So, Dad basically told them either you come out and fix it or we're suing.
Right.
Because fixing it will be a whole lot.
You shouldn't have to sue because they shouldn't have done that.
Well, apparently here in Missouri, there's a thing called Missouri One Call, where if you dig around at stuff, you need to contact them first to come out and check for like gas lines, power lines, stuff like that. They never contacted them. That's a $10,000 fine if we report it. Yeah. Because we have a gas line that runs underneath our property. If they hit that, they could have blown up our house.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That's what they refer to as bad.
That's what they refer to as somebody's gonna have a very bad time. So yeah,
A street operator might have died.
literally. Mm-hmm. Because the gas main is right underneath my fucking window.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So that's been fun. We've had a lot of rain, so they basically have done so far is like put down grass seed and like matting to keep stuff from eroding where the retaining wall should be. But once it dries out, like I think in the next week or two, they should be out to fix stuff for real. And if they're not, then this is going to be real fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see. Yesterday, I went to see the doctor, and apparently I have problems with migraines. So,
That's usually not something you don't know about.
well, he's first having me start on Excedrin. If that doesn't make it feel any better or just clear it up, then I might need to go see a specialist. So,
Did you just get headaches a lot, or?
I used to have headaches before I started my CPAP, but I don't know if it's the stress of the insurance, Medicaid stuff, my surgery coming up.
You've got a lot of stresses.
Yeah. So we don't know if it's that or if it's something else entirely, which I guess in a way could help my Medicaid case.
Hmm.
And yesterday was also mine and my twin sister's 27th birthday, so yay. As far as noteworthy stuff, I got a new band for my Gear Sport watch, a silicone grip cover thing for my PS4 controller, a USB Genesis controller,
Neat.
and a new case for my phone, and I think that's it, at least of note that I can remember.
Is the Genesis controller 3 or 6 button?
6 button.
Good, good.
That's what I grew up on. The bundle we got came with the 6 button, so
I had
That's good.
both. I mean, like, there's no reason why the upcoming Genesis Mini is coming with the 3 button.
yeah, especially because I think 2 of the games on there are better played with a 6 button.
Hmm. Anyway, um, let's see. Alex, why don't you go while you still have some energy?
I worked a whole bunch of extra hours this week because the people who normally do the task that I was doing were one of them is on their honeymoon, and 2 of them were away to conference, so I had to get up earlier, and that was not a whole lot of fun. Luckily, I didn't have any particularly big problems getting to sleep, but still, I am rather tired and looking forward to the next 2 days being normal, because this was thankfully a beginning of the week only task. I haven't had much time for games because of that, honestly. And the weather has been extremely roller coastery. Like, it's been each day it's like started one way and then ended the opposite way in terms of being like cloudy and damp and then sunny and warm. So yeah, not a whole lot really going on since I've been spending most of my extra time trying to catch up on stuff that I missed by being at work longer for the last few days.
All right. Twilight, you're up.
All right. Well, starting off, the right side of my used leather chair broke earlier this week.
That sucks.
Yeah, I managed to fix it though. Some glue and duct tape.
That fixes just about everything.
Yeah, the duct tape was just used to reinforce it to make sure it doesn't break so easily again.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's not quite what it was before, but it's usable. Also, I had to take my car in today to fix a malfunctioning airbag.
That's
And,
not good.
Yeah, it was for free though. It was actually one of those
One of those recall
those deals.
things.
Yeah, I just procrastinated.
Yeah, my mom had a
Fine.
problem with her Nissan that needed to be solved with as well.
Yeah, mine was a Toyota Corolla.
Mhm.
It was for free, and while I was at it, I also had a malfunctioning tire pressure light, and they fixed that as well, which I'm thankful for.
Mm.
And besides that, I was Sunday, and that's about it. So you next, Adam?
All right. Let's see. I guess in terms of breakage news, my high-powered fan stopped working the other day, like which was a problem because it's now May and we're getting into the time of it's 90 degrees within during the day.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Well, it's like there's also air conditioning, but to have circulation, you need the fan. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like but fortunately, I was able to get a new one pretty quickly from Amazon. Had to do a bit of borrowing because I was not using the money I earmarked for the controller for the fan. So, oh well, I'll just pay that back in June. Let's see. Tomorrow the place is getting power washed, so we'll have to flee that for a few hours. Fortunately, it's happening in the middle of the morning, so I can't just take in Endgame and be done with it. So, um, not exactly sure what to do tomorrow, but something will be figured out. So, yeah, that's about all I've got for news this week. So, merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And this week we have with us John Flook of Silver Dollar Games.
Hello.
Oh, how are you doing tonight?
Good.
That is excellent to hear. Right, so how we like to start things is by getting to know the person behind the game, studio, whatnot. And we do this by asking how they got interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level.
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of a crazy story. I guess, I don't even know, something like 13 years ago, let's go further back. I don't know. We grew up with, I'm not even sure what it was, one of those computers that had just one color, and it wasn't white, it was orange. I'm not sure what those ones were called, but it was one of the very first computers.
The word you're looking for is monochromatic.
Yeah, maybe. And it was really old, and my brother programmed some really rudimentary things back when it was almost not really invented. This is the time of Pong. He's 40 something now, so he was doing this when he was a kid, and that gives perspective to how long ago that was. But he made games that you couldn't do much with programming languages back then. So he would do things like draw a bunch of cursor, a bunch of lines, and then a space, and then some lines, and then use the function of return key, but program that in so it moves down, and he would have a path that you would drive through, kind of using symbols like that. That's how rudimentary things were all those years ago. He went on to do a handful of little games in his high school program, and this was at a time when the teacher didn't even know anything, so he was kind of teaching the class himself almost. And then he stopped doing all that, and he was just working at a grocery store for I don't even know, 12 years. And then XNA came along in I don't even know, 2007-ish or 6-ish or something like that. And it was a programming language that was supposedly built to help you with prototypes and do 2D stuff much easier than just fumbling around with raw code and doing everything from scratch. It would take months and months to get anything functioning. XNA was kind of promising to make those steps a lot easier. And he thought, you know what, let's try some stuff. And he made a couple games. And then he asked me if I wanted to help out, and I said, "Oh, okay, sure." This is all just casual, while I was working at a grocery store called No Frills, and I was working at a TV station at that time, and kind of just went from there. XNA was used for a couple Xbox Live Arcade games, but most notably was the language that Microsoft used. It was a Microsoft thing. I should have mentioned that.
Yeah.
But that was the only language you could use for Microsoft's strange little service called Xbox Live Indie Games. And that's separate from Xbox Live Arcade. When I mention that now, since it's been a decade, a lot of people don't even really know the difference. But Xbox Live Arcade is more like what the arcade games you see today on Xbox One. And Xbox Live Indie Games is more like, I forget. But right now on the Xbox One, if you have one, there's a little square, and I think it's called Community Games or something like like that. And I swear no one has ever actually been there that I know of, but it's there. And you click it, there's about 50 games in there. Well, that is what the equivalent of Xbox Live indie games was. I would say that this generation, whatever it's called, I think it's called community games or something, is way more hidden, as I've never met anyone that's ever actually gone in there. But Xbox Live Indie Games was also pretty hidden, but it was a little more exposed than what it is today. But anyways, there's that important difference there, because the Xbox Live Arcade games required a full contract. The full SDK and the full Xbox production had to be localized in languages. It was a very time-consuming, very painful process to get through. Whereas Xbox Live indie games, anyone could just do whatever you wanted. It's kind of like what Steam is today, only did that 10 years ago. There was no rules, as long as you're not like Nazis shooting people or whatever rules they had there, like generic porn and stuff like that, sure. But besides that, it was basically anything goes. There's no approval process for that service. And that's where we got our start. We made a bunch of little games on Xbox Live indie games. And we made, I don't even know, maybe 10 or 15-ish, just as a hobby. And then we kind of like said, okay, this is kind of working. Let's just quit our jobs and do this full time. And that's how we ended up where we are today.
I'm like, I am familiar with the Xbox Live Indie channel and the XNA, but it's been a while since I've heard those uttered. Like, yeah.
Yeah, XNA got shut down.
Yeah.
Not shut down, but Microsoft said we're not supporting it anymore, and that's a ticking time bomb for saying one day you'll turn it on and it simply won't work. Now, and all the Xbox stuff is not going to support it, but technically you could still use it to make a PC game because Windows is Microsoft, so it still works there. But honestly, I don't know anyone doing that. Also, it's crazy. When they first announced Xbox One, I remember something. Maybe I'm wrong. Talking about online only, and everyone got so mad. And okay, fine, we won't make it online only, or something like that. Something where you had to connect online or something.
Was that at the same time they were talking about having required Connect always?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. Well, what's interesting is Xbox Live Indie Games was always that way. And since the service was shut down about a year and a half ago, because Xbox 360's done, that time is, it's over. Those games can no longer be accessed. So every game I ever made or anyone else on that service is completely gone. Not that it matters; those games would be gone anyways because they're old and no one gives a shit. But yeah, that's the end of that. They physically cannot be played anymore because the servers were shut down. So it's interesting that there was a service that had to have that online connectivity that no one kind of knew about, but that was going on Microsoft's end for quite some time.
Anyway, so is this where Silver Dollar Games begins?
Yeah, we made using XNA. We made the very first game was an Xbox Live Arcade game, like an official full game for the better service. Or maybe I shouldn't say better, but just more proper. Called Blazing Birds. It was like a badminton game, like robot badminton. It was too hard to play. It was a weird little game. At the time, it was one of the only Xbox Live Arcade games that was priced at $5, so it was really small. All the other games were probably about $10. Not that we even had dollars back then; it was points. So yeah, it was 400 points at that point. At that point in time. But anyways, and then we made another game called Blow, which was like a cool little game. That was day one launch when Xbox Live Indie Games launched, and that game didn't sell a dime, and it was really cool. And people were like, "Oh, you should check out this game," but you can't force things down people's throat. And then we said, you know what? this is just not working. Let's just have some fun for a change instead of spending like a year making something that's so grueling and difficult that no one even wants to play. And we made a lot of like just little things, like just, oh man, weird little jokes and like Johnny's Minefield, Johnny's Skydive, Johnny's Snowball. We made a whole bunch of these games that just like torture this guy named Johnny, this character, just for the hell of it. And we started seeing a little bit of success there. And that's when we started making silver games. The idea was that the game would sell for $1, and that's why we call it silver dollar games.
Like, and when did you make the switch over to like Steam PC? And did that start with the One Finger Death Punch series here?
Yeah, when we made One Finger Death Punch, what was that? We had a bit of it ready in 2012, but it wasn't fully out till like 2014, and that is when Microsoft announced that Xbox Live Indie Games is getting shut down, and we kind of had an inkling that they weren't going to continue it with Xbox One, and we were right that it was gone. Looking back now, they haven't done anything like that. So that it was the right call to be like, our entire business is ending. We need to jump ship and go somewhere else. And we went, I guess the only game we really had that was new at the time that was worth anything to us was One Finger Death Punch. So we put that over to Steam.
And how did that work out for you?
We got really lucky. It was just kind of like super lucky. The game's a neat little game, but like if Total Biscuit didn't play it and like it, then everyone else wouldn't have seen it on YouTube. I'm assuming they saw like, oh, what's this guy playing? And then Markiplier played it, and like the sheer numbers of views that it had on YouTube because of just a few key people made it successful. Like in that sense, you could shove that game down someone's throat because so many people saw it. It helped that everyone liked it for its price point. I think it was priced just right. There was actually a handful of other Xbox Live indie games that got ported over to Steam around the exact same time because other developers were doing the same thing we were doing. And a lot of them charged more, and I think that kind of hurt them a little bit. So we got lucky in two cents. We had the right price point. It was pretty cheap. And those key YouTubers, like, honestly, it's like a lightning bolt. It's so lucky. We didn't even know how lucky we were at that time. I guess how foolish were we? But yeah, we can really attribute all of the success to a handful of YouTubers, for sure.
Yeah, that was already a different time because the whole YouTube focusing on indie games thing seems to be over. Like,
yeah, it sure is.
I mean,
there are still some people who do it, but most of the big names do games that people will recognize more.
Right. It's sort of like they're playing like Fortnite or Dota 2 or whatever is super popular with a mass market audience, let's say, these days. Maybe that's the Twitch effect.
Yeah.
But, it's like, but yeah.
We sent our game out to a lot of YouTubers this time around, and in the process, you kind of see the history, and you see that a lot of them started in 2007, but never really got going till 2012. And it's interesting to see that One Finger Death Punch came out in 2014. It was just 2 years that some people had this success going for. But now, in 2019, some are so big, like let's say you were making $1 million a year back then. Now you're making 50 million. Like it's over. There's no room to dabble in little games like ours.
Yeah, there are some that are so big they have their own PR firms.
Oh, exactly. And I don't think they did in 2014.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's where that luck came in for us.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
at least the ones that played my game probably didn't at that time. But now,
Yeah,
to
there
have
are
them
still
play it
small.
again,
There are still smaller people who do stuff, and even a couple of good-sized people will still try out different things, but they're not as popular as just game streamers. So
I mean, we can definitely relate to that, given I mean, we're a smaller venue.
hmm
It's like, I mean, I wish we could give one, one finger death punch to here that kind of exposure, but that is currently beyond our grasp.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
But anyway, so all that aside, about the game itself, what is One Finger Death Punch for those who might not be familiar with the game?
My sales pitch has been that it's the best two-button game ever made, even though there's a lot of those actually. The fastest brawler ever made. And I'd probably say it's the coolest kung fu game. I don't want to say best, but it's the coolest kung fu game ever made. Those are my statements.
see, when you describe it like that, it makes me think of Dive Kick.
Yeah, because the two buttons and fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten a chance to play this game yet. If you heard in my news, I've been completely wiped all week. So
Oh wow. Well, I hope when you get a chance. Have you played the first one?
no, I don't think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
I
That's
was
perfect,
playing the first one earlier today, and yeah, it reminds me a lot of Kung Fu. The
Yeah.
one with the NES.
Oh, that one. Okay, no, I was thinking of a different game. Yeah, no, I guess.
Well, it's like for those who don't know what Kung Fu is, it's what they call a belt scroller or something like that, or a belt brawler. Like the enemies come out like a conveyor belt, and and it being an NES game, it's two buttons. Although you can move and stuff with one with one finger here. When it's two buttons, it's left and right. Like there is no movement.
So the only movement is when you move as part of a combo. I'm looking at the videos now, and it does look. It's a little different than I expect. When you said it was a brawler, I was kind of picturing more of a versus compatible game, whereas this is more. It's more like an old school beat 'em up.
Yeah. Anyway, what made you want to make this game only two buttons?
I know a lot of people say like, well, it's the sequel. Shouldn't you have added a third button or just something of this and that? But I can't explain to them that anytime you add a third button or anything else, it just makes the game worse. What happened was originally we made an iteration of this game called Your Kung Fu Is Not Strong. And it was like a thing where you fought like 20 guys. It was more complex. And you take one hit and you lose. It was little like complex little scenes that you would work your way through. And it used 4 buttons. And it was a disaster. All of our friends just, they played it with a smile on their face, but they fucking hated it. Sorry, pardon my language. They hated it. It was awful. And we stripped the whole game down and basically started from scratch and said, okay, what's really going on here? And I find, and this will relate, I think, to how One Finger Punch succeeds and fails. But we did a prototype of the game with just squares and triangles and said, okay, let's play this without anything else and see if just this gameplay of stuff coming from left and right, you pressing stuff, is fun. And it seemed to work. And I feel like that simplicity makes the game work. But on the other side of it, if I made like Overwatch with just squares and triangles, people would be like, I'm out, get me the hell out of it. Exact same gameplay. You use Reaper's shotguns, there won't be a shotgun there. There'll just be something that has that range. It's just a triangle. I am so out. And I feel
Your
like
game does have fancy visuals.
It does, but in
But
this day and age, not
but you're
fancy
going
enough, in my opinion.
right. But you're going for simplicity of play experience, and since the title of your game made me think of the Bruce Lee's One-Inch Punch, there's an apropos Bruce Lee quote for this actually, which is the "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times."
Yeah, that's funny. That One-Inch Punch is where my brother got the name from. So that's funny. In fact, people often ask like, what's the inspiration for the game? Uh, and they are always looking for some other game out there. And we say there's no other game at all. It came from just movies. And the one that's most notable is it Fists of Fury? Is that a Bruce Lee movie? The one where he's in that dojo and he walks in there and he takes on the whole dojo at once. He's using weapons and all this stuff, and it's like one versus many.
Oh, Game of. Or, are you talking about Game of Death or?
No, definitely not Game of Death.
Fist of Fury is indeed a Bruce Lee movie from 1972. So
right.
Yeah, it's that one. And then the other moment that really defines what this game, I guess, came from is the end of Jet Li's movie, The One, where he's trying to eliminate all the other Jet Lis in all the other multiverses because it makes them stronger. And there's a good guy and a bad guy, and the bad guy gets put into a prison at the very end of the film, and he's on top of a pyramid in this giant outdoor prison thing, and he's swarmed by all the other prisoners, and they're all climbing that pyramid, and he's just taking them all on top of that pyramid. And that is essentially what we tried to create.
It kind of looks like, I mean, it's literally you're standing there and you've got guys coming at you from every dimension that the game includes.
Yeah.
I mean, the logical, like, elaboration of this game would actually be, like, putting it at a 3D angle and having, like, 3 different directions to punch in, or 4 different, like, up and down, too. But, again, that's complicating the play experience, which is what you're going for here.
Yeah, because when we added in the third button, and we did it the first time, and we did it the second time, and we found that you can add in more buttons. You can add in a whole bunch of buttons. It doesn't matter. But you're slowing down the gameplay when you do that. And the idea was to keep it faster. We did have an iteration in the first game that was just one button. As crazy as that sounds, but it was a little too easy.
Well, yeah, if you make it one button, you have to have really specific timing things.
Yeah, or something else, or whatever, for sure.
In that case, you basically have attack and like not attack, which you'd probably make block. So you have to block all the attacks incoming and then counterattack or something.
Yeah, or something, because when you're developing it, it's all about trial and error. You try something, you're like, oh, this sucks. Okay, you try something else, or you know what I mean. So you're right. Who knows how that would evolve over time, but I'm sure you could get there if you really tried.
So a question of mine is, in both games, the characters are all abstract sign men. You know, it's like they look like the guys you see in the street signs.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
We were making some game, and some lady was doing art for us, and it was like the first time we actually were going to pay someone for art, because we got a little bit of money, and normally we just do whatever we can ourselves, which is essentially nothing. We have nothing. At least all the other games we've ever made, we made with nothing, and we had to do them quickly because we had no money. But this time we hired somebody, and she messed it all up, and we ended up wasting that money amazingly. But she used a program called, like, oh man, it was like Tune something, or some, I forget, it was so long ago, some animation program that wasn't very good. And we tried to fix the animations ourselves, and it didn't work. But in the process, we said, hey, you know what? We always wanted to do something with like a kung fu. Let's make a stickman character. Just use this program that we're kind of tinkering with here, and maybe we can do a whole bunch of moves. Now, we can't make it look good, you know, like awesome to have like a Street Fighter 8 character from the future, from 2035, brought back to now. Wouldn't that be great? but we can't. So all we'll do is stickman. That's all we can handle. But stickman will allow us to do a lot of moves and really get that kung fu feeling. And yeah, essentially, it started from a kind of a debacle and turned into what you see today.
I mean, as far as debacles go, I've heard much worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then with the second one, which it's debatable how this all goes down, but Unity has all this animation tools built in, and we're like, cool, we're using Unity now. But like, I knew animating the animations was going to be an issue. Um, it's hard to explain in forum posts and things, but a lot of people said I liked the animations better in the first one, and we would say things like, well, technically, the first one, every attack was only 3 frames, and you usually skipped over the second. So it's really only 2: about to punch and punched. It was the chunkiest, blockiest thing ever. And in the second one, it was smooth. And it still went fast, but it was very smooth. But that smoothness, I knew it would lose some of the impactful feeling. But technically, it's like really cool, but it has caused some problems. People have been like, I don't like it. I can't jump on board with it. So, I don't know what that all means, but we tried our best, that's for sure.
I'm not sure that's the kind of thing you could edit at this stage, given
No.
that the game is like out now.
No, yeah, it's a lot of people are requesting various things. Not a lot of people, a couple people in the forums uh, request these things, but you can't explain to anyone when you're typing it. It just doesn't come out right. We worked on the game for 5 years. You would have to sell like millions of dollars, like for us to do all this extra work. Like the simplest change would take months and months. And a small indie game like this is probably just a disaster for how much money it's going to make. And it's hard to communicate that to people because they want all this cool stuff, and you're like, it's just 2 of us. It's just no way.
Certainly. Like, and people can be difficult, but it's like there's no, there's no way of going back to the old style without like a complete, like from the bone redevelopment.
Yeah, no, and we wouldn't want to go back because the new style does all kinds of these little cool things that people don't really pick up on. Like it'll do these throws and these other like a dragon uppercut kind of like Street Fighter moves, and it will seamlessly transition from those moves to the next move instantly. Because if you attack, let's say 4 times in a row, instantly, like ba 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 ba, then it, how it transitions that quickly is like it's actually a very like marvelous like technical feat that we did there. You'll see the a full throw move, and it'll transition over to the next punch instantly, and it'll look cool. And I think a lot of that is just skipped over, and no one really notices what's actually going on there. But it's really, really cool. Also, in the old game, there was really nothing. It was just punches. In fact, the weapons never swung. Like, you never swung a weapon. You poked all the time, like a sword. Because it was only 2 frames, there's no frames for actual swing animation, just the ending position. So staffs, swords, clubs, all that stuff was kind of just poking the enemy. Whereas now you get the full animation of everything, and it seems to kind of work. So I feel like the animation set in the new game does all these cool things, but can be missed.
That's a certain possibility. I'm like, anyway, animation aside, what is new in one finger death punch too.
Um, yeah, pretty much every. Um, it's tough. I have several statements for that. Usually, my number one statement is it makes the first game obsolete in every possible way, which doesn't doesn't do well for selling the first game. That's for sure. But uh, two of the most notable uh, additions to the game is dodging projectiles and deflecting projectiles. It seems so simple, but and trivial. But when you dodge a projectile, it continues past you and will hit an enemy there. When you deflect a projectile, it'll deflect back at the enemy and kill them. But when you mix that all in to enemies that are dodging left and right and projectile dodging you and all this other stuff happening, it's the most beautiful kind of kung fu chaos you've ever seen. And I feel like people see that and go, "Oh, neat." But those two elements, like I've never seen it in another game done like we've done it. Like it's crazy. When I see other games like deflect something back, it's like a one-off special moment that happens here and there. This is like so fluid, and it can happen 50 times in a minute. It's just completely chaotic, but it's also very controlled. Like once you play the game and know what you're doing, you know exactly what everything's going to do. Like this is going to deflect, kill this guy. This is going to dodge, kill that guy. And it's like, wow, it's amazing that we managed to keep the game um, so playable and have so much stuff going on at the same time.
I mean, how hard was that to implement?
Oh, it's the fact that every element of the game can happen at any given time is a huge problem. And maybe we shouldn't have done how we did it, but um, problem is, let's say you're making some other game and like stage 2 boss doesn't work. Well, great. He's not going to wreck stage 1 boss and stage 3 boss. He's not going to wreck the whole game. But here, since anything can happen at any time, if one thing isn't working, it explodes the whole game and it's a nightmare. And when you add in something like a dodging projectile and it breaks the game in 4 different ways, normally it would just break the game in one little way. But now that since everything's connected, adding one little thing in like shatters everything. And what that leads to is this development cycle where you add something in and then fix stuff for like 3 months. Then you add something in and fix stuff for 3 months. And it's so brutal. It's such a painful grind and inefficient, and probably hurts the product because it takes too long to make. Like there's no way you're going to make your money back because it just took so long to make the game. But that's also one of the charms of the game is that at any given time, any of the 1,000 animations or the 26 skills or any of the enemy types can happen at any given time and mix together with any other element. I think that's what makes the game special.
Right. And on the flip side of that coin, no pun intended, were there any ideas for this game that you couldn't implement that you might want to do in a One Finger Death Punch 3?
Interesting statement. For many reasons. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff we couldn't do. Just a ton of stuff that was just this is never going to happen. Not with the money we have, not with the time. Like we spent 5 years making the game, and that's full time. So now our families are like, wow, we got to support our families. What a problem this is. And yeah, there'll definitely never be a One Finger Death Punch 3. And I don't know if we'll be able to continue doing this. It didn't sell very well on Steam. And we have to put it over to the consoles, and that's what we're working on now. But I've never known a game to sell or at least let's say even name 5 games that sold really bad on Steam, but really good on consoles. You know, I haven't seen that. So,
I mean, I have. Like, we've
oh,
had people
I
on the
haven't.
show mention that their game has done better on, especially the Nintendo Switch.
I know that's what I hear, but I I've been part of the indie mega booth, and there I've talked to other developers, and from time to time I actually have heard the opposite, where the Switch, you thought this is going to be really good here, and it turns out it wasn't. And I know it's kind of an eye opener because I get this impression as well that the Switch is like, oh, this is going to be so gangbuster, yeah. But then the data that I'm receiving as of late is it's no picnic there for sure, and it's a very competitive and tough market. That a lot of the old games, like I think just a few weeks ago, they released the top 10 selling indie games on there, and it was all like dominant stuff like Stardew Valley and things like that, where you're like, yeah, no brainers that are crushing the competition, Shovel Knight and other games like that, and you're like, whoa.
Well,
This
it's
is
not
a tough
guaranteed,
place.
but it could be worth a shot, maybe.
Well,
Well,
it's not
yeah,
guaranteed.
definitely.
And more to the point, like the Switch is now about 2 years old, so the Switch has a lot more games than it did, 6 months ago, a year ago, where success was much more guaranteed because there just was less product to compete with.
Yeah, that's exactly what. Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree. hmm It's just a harder time.
Yeah.
But anyways, our game is coming to. We're going to release Xbox and Switch together. That's our plan at least. Maybe for the winter. We're working on that now, but these processes is so difficult, and it's just the two of us, and we're doing it all ourselves. And we won't work on PlayStation until those ones are finished, just because we can't physically get to it. It's just too much work to do all three at the same time. And plus, Unity has various obstacles in the way when you're working on different consoles. Some of them use a different version of Unity, so you're like, whoa, I got to work with 2 different versions of my game now, and that's so complicated and problematic. Or some other system that comes into play that you have to work around. So it's doing the two at the same time is just the most we could possibly do.
Yeah. It's actually kind of amazing that you're juggling 2 ports.
Yeah, I know it is, considering how difficult it can be at times without the proper help from some of the sources. The problem is that I know there's a lot of porting houses and stuff, but it's this may be the last game we ever make. Financially, it's just there's no money, so we might have to just find a job. But a lot of these companies, after working 5 years on it and specifically working in Unity because we knew we could port it ourselves, these porting companies usually take a percentage. Like sometimes it can be as much as 50-50. And you're like, whoa. I worked 5 years on this thing, risk everything, lose everything, potentially. And then you come in 6 months' time, take half of it. Oh, man, that's a big cut. So that's why we feel compelled to do it ourselves, no matter how difficult it is, because we just can't fork that over without, feeling bad about it.
Yeah, that's understandable. Like, we know some of the porting houses. We had them on our show. That they do good work, but yeah, there's a literal price to pay for it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that makes sense for other games where it wasn't spent, where they didn't spend so long making it, or other games that is trickier, like if it was done in XNA or something. But Unity, like, it's designed to port it easier. So under those conditions, it makes it just less valuable to go with the porting house. But for example, people have asked us, "Are you going to do a mobile version?" And honestly, I don't know how it's going to run 60 frames per second on a phone. Like it looks simple, but it's not, and it, you know, like how powerful is a phone? I don't know. But if it will run on a phone, then that's where we would get a porting house. We would be like, okay, guys, it's all yours. Please take whatever you want, do whatever you want. We do not have the skill or talent to pull that off in a million years. Here you go. In fact, our first game was brought to mobile many years ago by a team in South Korea, but that was the first game. Remember, was done in XNA, and XNA, there's no way that could be ported over efficiently, in my opinion. And they also agreed, so they actually rebuilt the first game from scratch using Unity, and it was a really difficult process for them, and kind of resulted in some of the struggles they had going forward. So yeah, it's interesting that they chose Unity to rebuild the whole game into. So we're hoping, because our game is in Unity now, some other company out there might be able to do it easier.
Right. Well, hopefully that is the case.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'll see if my colleagues here have any further questions for you, but I'm pretty good myself.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
I'm looking forward to trying out the game, honestly, after I've had some good sleep and stuff. Because this definitely looks like a game where reflexes are important.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we are reviewing the game in a couple weeks, so.
Oh, nice. Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that, because you asked, is there stuff we wanted to put into the game? And there's so much we wanted to do, and there's so much level of polish we wanted, and just physically couldn't do it, like the menus and other elements. But we hope, and this relates to reviewing the game, that the price point reflects the rough edges. I'd say it's one of the cheaper indie games out there. It really is. Like, there's not many. I can think of that Island game that just came out, but that's the only one I can think of that is pretty affordable. And I hope that the cheap price reflects the fact that we just weren't able to do all the level of polish that we wanted. And we know it's rough around the edges, but we're not asking for a lot, kind of thing. And I hope that is reflected when people see it, you know?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Like, well, I mean, hopefully your game does well on the consoles. You know?
I hope so too, yeah. If it doesn't, then, like I said, we'll probably be doing something else at some point. I did all the producing, working with the artists, and a lot of the other elements. My brother did all of the programming, and when it comes to Unity, he's a bit of a specialist when it comes to 2D programming. So I'm pretty sure if he really wanted to, he could find a job pretty easily. I know he really doesn't want to, though. He really wants to make this work in some capacity. So our fingers are crossed that console, some miracle will take place there.
Well, once again, we wish you good luck. Now,
Oh,
it's a
thank you very
harsh
much.
market out there.
It sure is.
Anyway, we're doing our part. Anyway, the game is One Finger Death Punch 2. It's available on Steam currently for $7.99, Windows only.
I do actually know someone who's good at twitchy reflex games. I might suggest this too.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
and it's coming to the Xbox One and Nintendo Switch this fall. So be sure to keep an eye out for that version should you want to play it on a box or on the go. Like, all right, Petty Fan, play us to the next segment. All right, welcome to the topic of discussion for the week. We could have gone with another crunch topic, but I think we've said all we wanted to say on that. Like, crunch is still bad. Don't do it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and good luck to Psionics at their new endeavor at Epic. Hopefully, the same fate won't befall them.
Mm-hmm.
But that all that aside, we actually are taking a different track than what the majority of people are talking about, and that is the Nintendo Switch's third-party support. And I want to do this because, well, the Nintendo Switch has received a bunch of high-profile games recently. You know, it's gotten Cuphead and Hellblade and Mortal Kombat 11 and Dragon's Dogma: Dark Arisen. And the question to put forth with the panel here is: has Nintendo recovered in the third-party game space? You know, you know, where is their third-party support at this moment in time?
I think the will is there at least to some extent, but they still have a little bit of the leftover Wii/Wii U issue of, well, a lot of companies aren't bringing over their newest stuff because the Switch can't actually play a lot of the newest stuff.
Well, like, at least with the Wii, they were willing to make new stuff for it because people bought the Wii.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, you know, it's like if you remember the Wii, yeah, there was a lot of stuff there, but it was also a lot of junk. You know, it's like, you know, mini game collection number 50, and
Add a couple more zeros onto that, but yes.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, 50,000, or you know, cheap license game number 28,000. Mind you, the Wii actually had a lot better third-party support than the pundits give it. It's just a lot of that flew under the radar and, you know, wasn't picked up in comparison to the casual bent. I mean, the Nintendo Switch is a completely different ecosystem in that regard. You know, it's like, yeah, it's got a bit of the casual flavor that the Wii had, you know, your 1-2 switches and whatnot, but it's definitely a much more hardcore system than the Wii was. Like, and I do think their biggest problem is the power differential, quite honestly, because you know, it's not like with the Wii U where, you know, developers were actively avoiding the system because, you know, that thing cratered into the fucking earth.
I think you can still see the smoldering ashes from space from it.
Probably, but you know, it's like you've got companies on the Switch that haven't been there in a good long time, or were never there, like Bethesda. Like, you know, Bethesda before the Switch, their third-party support for Nintendo systems is like some NES porting, and I think they published some stuff for the Wii. You know, not developed, just, you know, they published a thing or two.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and the Switch, to its credit, does get the occasional newfangled AAA game. Once again, Mortal Kombat 11. You know, some kudos does have to go to Warner Brothers and Shiver Studio. They're the ones who made the Switch version of the game. For making Mortal Kombat 11 and, you know, a reasonable facsimile of the Xbox, PlayStation. You know, it's like, I can't say HD because that's not a term that works these days, because everything is HD.
Yeah, the Switch, even undocked, is still... Yeah, even undocked is still 720p, which is still classified as HD.
Yeah, so stop calling things like the HD tag worked last generation because you were legitimately bringing things into high resolution. Like, we don't have a term for beyond 720p. You know, everything is still high resolution. I guess, you know, it's like ultra high resolution.
Yeah, UHD is apparently now a thing.
Yeah, I'm like, whatever it is, you get what I mean. Like, Mortal Kombat 11 is a game that's on the big systems and came out day and day with the other versions, which is a rarity
Mhm.
into itself, because a lot of the time the Switch version will come out later, because, well, it's like if you're working with um, a current gen game and have to fit it into the Switch, you're gonna have to make some compromises, unless it's a 2D indie title of such. Like, it's like Cuphead. Cuphead is the same game that it is on the Xbox
Mhm.
One. Like, in fact, it actually kind of runs better
And kind of looks
on the
better because they
Switch.
got rid of that film grain filter for the most part.
Like, um, but
Yeah, the film grain is thematic.
it's like, you know, but once again, Cuphead isn't going to be challenging the Switch in the same way even something like Firewatch does. Like,
Mhm.
and yeah, Firewatch doesn't run too hot on the Nintendo Switch.
Though Firewatch could also just be a bad optimization port.
That is true. That is true. I mean, we've seen that before, like how Writhe, that actually runs better on the Switch than the PlayStation 4, but that's known to be an optimization issue, which is kind of awkward to say because Abstraction Games handled the PlayStation 4 their version, and they are friends of the show. I mean, sometimes that just happens. But anyway, yeah, I'd say the Nintendo Switch third-party support is about as good as it's going to get.
Mm-hmm.
In overall terms.
Well, I guess in this current iteration of the Switch, if it gets more powerful, there might be more
Possibly.
support.
I mean, it's like, yeah, it's like people who are expecting Anthem or fucking Destiny 2. It's like Assassin's Creed Origins. Insert big AAA game here onto the Nintendo Switch. Look,
Especially since the current big AAA aesthetic is very much into
yeah.
cinematic realism style rather than something that reacts better to being dynamically downscaled or whatever.
Yeah, the point of order is, unless there's like a streaming version, because Resident Evil 7 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey, they have Nintendo Switch versions, but they are streamed. That's the only way you're gonna do this, unless we are talking about some major compromises or
Mhm.
some technical wizardry. I mean, like for example, Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus is on the Nintendo Switch, and it's an interesting way to play Wolfenstein. Like on the go, I would recommend, but it's like Wolfenstein 2 is quite compromised. It's blurry as fuck. It's 30 frames per second. Like, but most of the game is there. Like, it is essentially the same game as the other versions, but once again, it's going there's going to be a hit somewhere, either in the visuals, the design, the frame rate. That's just fucking facts. That is just the Nintendo Switch is not as powerful as even a base
Yeah.
PlayStation 4.
Yeah, it's like it was less prevalent because at the start of the Switch, because we were still in games that could run on the PS3 or the Xbox 360. They
Well, I
just
mean,
looked a little shinier on the PS4.
yeah. Well, that being said, the Nintendo Switch is no stranger to last gen ports.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those it can get from here to Tuesday, no problem, because the Nintendo Switch is more powerful than any seventh generation console. Even its immediate forebearer, the Wii U, and it's you know, and that's where a lot of the Western third party support is coming from. Not so much. It's either like the indie set or it's like the THQ Nordics in the world,
Mm-hmm.
or it's the Japanese support. It's like they're tossing off last gen stuff or maybe a reformulated. It's about as good as you're gonna get. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I mean, and you get the occasional like FIFA soccer or NBA 2K, what have you. But it's like by and large, you know, AAA sales aren't being restricted by the console. It's not the Wii where the audience was so different that selling like Red Steel 2 in the year of 2010, I think, was a bad idea.
Mhm.
Something like that. Or Silent Hill Shattered Memories in 2009. There was a hardcore audience in the beginning. The people that bought Twilight Princess, for example, or made
Yeah.
the first Red Steel a hit, but that dried up quickly. Or it's not like the Wii U where it's like nobody fucking bought the thing. So, putting on, like I said, launch titles and such, because the Wii U did for a brief window of time have big hits like Deus Ex and Mass Effect and Assassin's Creed of the, Assassin's Creed 3, Assassin's Creed 4, the Batman games to a certain, it's like it got those things. Until the Wii U started to really fail at sales. Which,
Yeah.
it was like its final nail was about a year in. And I think the Nintendo Switch has done a fantastic job reversing that course. And I know Nintendo's own software titles can be intimidating. But on the other hand, a lot of companies have been finding a lot of success on the Nintendo Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything, obviously, but still, and Octopath Traveler, for example. That's a game that cleared 1 million.
That was a game that genre everybody thought was dead, and yet it sells 1 million copies. Who would have known?
Yeah, and I'm sure we're going to be getting more Octopath Travelers out of that or whatever. I suppose the other thing is, you don't have a lot of exclusive games being built for the Switch. That's more a sign of the times. Even last generation, third-party exclusives were a rarefied sight.
Well, I guess in the AAA space, there are some timed exclusive indie games.
Well, that you do get like the occasional Japanese game that's only on the PlayStation, but that's more because the Xbox One has no Japanese presence, that kind of thing. Point of order is, games are too fucking expensive unless one of the first parties is paying a lot of money to fund that. Like Street Fighter V. Sony literally paid for that. The Bayonetta 2 and Bayonetta 3. Nintendo paid for that, literally. They funded that construction. Or
because no one else would. It's not like they were the first choice.
Right. Although it's a bit weird for Street Fighter. Really, you couldn't have done a Street Fighter V without Sony? That's a bit suspect. But whatever. Or you get, Microsoft blundering into purchasing a timed exclusive to Shadow of the Tomb Raider. These are more the, it's not how it like it was in the Sega Genesis, the 16-bit era, or even the 32-bit era. It's like, and the overall health of the Nintendo Switch is pretty healthy if you don't mind not being able to play the super shiny, super expensive, super resource demanding AAA titles.
Or, of course, ones that other people have exclusive permanent or temporary licenses to. Me grumbles at lack of Digimon games on the Switch.
Right. Anyway, any other thoughts on that?
My thesis was pretty much my main thought on it. Is that it's not doing bad, but it would be nice if, now that Nintendo has a popular thing again, they could have something that other people, that like some of the higher end games could be on.
Once again, it's happening to a certain extent, but
I guess it really depends if the rumors of the Switch Pro actually come to fruition. You know, if the Switch gets more power, it's probably going to get more third-party support because they won't have, you know, you won't either have such badly cut down versions, or it'll be easier to port to.
Assuming people aren't extremely hesitant to actually make Switch Pro exclusives, because, you know, that happens to things like the new 3DS and stuff, where people don't want to release a game that's not usable on some versions of a console.
Indeed. Anyway, that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Coming up on the week ahead, nothing this Friday, but the next couple of Fridays we'll be having stuff on, you know, full-blown shows. Well, minus the, you know, the topic of discussion bit, but, you know, more on that in the, you know, like the, you know, the shows ahead. Coming up on Sunday, game reviews. We'll be reviewing Jelly Blocks. Petty Fan will be handling Citadel Keeper 1986, and we got Helheim, and that is hell in the Viking Norse mythology sense. You know, HEL. I know we've just been getting a lot of Norse games recently.
I mean, that is the proper Norse name for Hell's realm.
Yeah.
In Niflheim or whatever.
Yeah, I know. It's weird that we're getting a lot of the Norse mythology games, and there's no real theming behind it. That's just, you know, the games we get.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, until Sunday, I shall wish you good gaming.